I want to record a new video about very basic Git practices. As you know, we may use GitLab, GitHub, or Bitbucket, or maybe even something else, I don't know, but I will go with GitHub. So let me create a new repository here on which we can do very basic activities. So create new here. Let's rename as just new repo. Alright, just create without any setting. And it is available here. So let me go back to my command line and make a new directory here, new repo, and let's go inside. Okay, so I'm in the relevant folder. So first of all, I can initialize this folder as a Git directory. So this command is the very basic, very first command that I executed. So let me take some notes here. Git init is the first I use for initializing this repository. And in the meantime, of course, not only the command line, but also I can use some tools. So let me find my source tree. I will open the same repository in my source tree. So it is here. Okay, I will see my changes here as well. So now I can check my status here. I'm on branch master and I don't have any commits yet. So actually this is the second command that I used, right? So let's note this as well. And maybe we can start creating some new files. But first of all, let's try to create a branch, because normally working on the master or main branch is not a good practice. So what we can do is we can check out to a new branch or one of the existing branch. So let's try to check out to my new changes. But this branch does not exist, right? So it couldn't find the relevant branch. So what I can do is just add a parameter here, which is -b, which means like checkout, and if it does not exist, just create a branch with -b parameter. So let's note this as well. And I still don't see anything on source tree because I'm still working on my local, right? And I don't have any push or any activity on remote. So let's create a new file by just using the terminal. So I can do it like first new text file. Okay, let's add something. This is my first file. So by the way, this is the file editor on Mac. So I just used nano command, and then after I update my file, I'll execute Ctrl X command, and then I'm asked if I want to save my changes. So I will go with yes, and then the file name I already typed it whenever I execute my nano command, so it will be the same, new one.txt. Okay, so I have my file. Let's see my status again. Now I have an untracked file, right? Okay, now since I have a change in my local, I can see it. It is an Unstage file here. So let's try to edit or stage it, which means it will be ready to be commit. So what I can do is I can just add the relevant file. Now after executing the add, it should be staged. So now I can see the relevant file under the stage files. So let's add the next command that we executed here as well. And now what we can do is, of course, we can already commit, right? Let's try to do that. Because I have some state changes here, but I want to do a commit. Commit means the milestones of my changes, right? I can have a few commits in my implementation whenever I do some extent of implementation. Then if I feel like it is a good time for doing a commit, then I can do it. And then after a few commits, eventually I can try to merge all my changes into my main branch. So now I'm on a working branch, and what all the changes that I'm doing here will be on my working branch, and eventually I can merge this branch into the main, which means I will apply all my changes or new implementation into the main branch. And in my working branch, there can be multiple commits. We will see how it looks like, but let's do our first commit. Whenever I execute commit, it opens a Vim, which is again the editor for the commit messages. So we will just write our commit message. So let's write here. Like this is the first commit with file this. Okay, so in Vim file you can write your message in insert mode. So what we can do is first, after writing the message, first hit the escape button, and then since now we are not in the insert mode, the next thing that I will do is just write, which will be like this, and then quit. So I can do these two separately, but in the meantime I can do these two together as well. So it means write and quit, so it will be saved. When I do this, actually I did a commit, right, with this commit message. So unintentionally I included this message as well. Normally it should be starting with DS sign, but now I somehow included that as well, but I can see my commit message here. So now I don't see any change, right, because the commit is already on my branch. So whenever I start doing some new changes, I will again see all my changes here. So let's edit here as well, commit, and working with Vim. After insert mode, escape, and then write and quit. All right. And for creating a file, it was control and X, right? Cool. Let's move on. So let's add another file. Which command did I use? I used nano, right? So sometimes, maybe a small tip here, sometimes it is not easy to find my recent comments on the command line, right? So what we can do is we can just start searching with Control R. It will be a backward search, and after doing that, if I start typing, it will already autocomplete. I can already see one of my recent messages here. So this time let's create a second file and let's write something. This is my second file. Okay. And even let's create a third file. All right, so I can see two files which are still Unstage, right? So what I was doing is I was adding, right, by passing the file name. But instead of passing the file name, if I just add a dot here, means all the Unstage files under the relevant folder. So when I execute this, again, let's check the status. These two files are now staged. So they are ready to be committed. Let's see it here as well. Cool. So add either by passing a file name or just with a dot, right, which adds all the files. And now let's do a commit as well again for this. And this time we can try another way of doing the commit. So normally when we just run it as is by git commit, we were entering the vim mode. But if we try to add the message directly on the command itself, we can just pass a parameter which is m parameter, and then we will pass our message like this is second commit with files 2 and 3. Now two files changed and both are inserted to our working branch. Let's note this as well. All right, so now what we can see is I did some commits, right? But after some time I can already forget what I have already done. So maybe it will be good to remember what kind of commits I have. So let's try to run git log. So when I execute this, I will see all the recent commits. For example, here I have a commit in which I had this was actually my second commit, and this was a commit with two files, 2 and 3. And there is another commit, I can see it here, with the relevant commit message. And interestingly, I can see some unique IDs here, so it will be useful to go to the relevant commits for some reason, and we can have a look on these hashes as well. Actually, these unique IDs are called as the commit hash. So first of all, let's note our next command which we executed. It was the git log. All right. So let's do some further changes. want to do several changes, and maybe some of them we want to revert it back, right? Because if I accidentally do some changes, let's see how we can revert them. So let's first note here. What was it called? Let me see. It is the instant history. Okay, instant history search. All right, so now what we can do is maybe we can create some other files like file 4, file 5, did I save it? No, file 5. And actually let's try to change one of the previous files, for example the first file. This was my first file, okay, and this is a recent update. Cool. Let's save it. Yes, new one.txt. Yes. So now what I did is, in my recent change, I added 2 new files, 4 and 5, and I updated one of the previous files, which was the new one. So all of them are unstaged, right? So let's try to stage them, but we can just type adding by executing add dot, but I can simply do that, the same thing on source tree by selecting all and clicking the stage. So after this point, if I try to unstage one of them, what I will do is I will just run, for example, git reset head new one. Let's say I was not supposed to change this file, just add the new files. So new file, I want to unstage. So when I see new one goes back to the unstage files. But interestingly, we can see some keywords as head here, right? What does it mean? It means like before this commit, I mean, actually this is not a commit yet, but we can say after the last commit, we are working on some new changes, new updates, right? This will be a new commit, but not yet. So our last commit was, what was it? Commit 2. Right, so we can actually see the history of all my all commits as well. Again, go to git log. So we have 2 commits. The first one added the file new one, and the second commit added files 2 and 3. So now I want to go to the head, means going to this point, just after applying commit with this message. So if I do that, new one.txt file will stay in the previous status. But I can still see the change, right? This is my change, but in an unstage file. So even if I commit these changes, the updates on the new one file will not go to my commit. So this was unstaging a file. So we can, let me first add this comment to my notes. This was actually unstaging a file. And there is one more thing I can do for the same purpose, which is using the restore command. So let me again stage it here. Git restore staged new one txt. Again, it did the same thing, right? The staged new one txt is restored to the unstage. Let's note it here. Cool. After seeing this unstaging, let's actually stage again to apply this update. So let's add a new commit here, third commit, new files, and change the first file. Okay, so when we see the git log, now I can see 3 commits. Okay, but let's say I did the last update on the first file accidentally, unintentionally. I will try to revert it back, which means I want to see new one.txt file as only one line, because the second line was the update that I had applied in my last commit, right? In this commit. So I want to see new one.txt file again as only one line, single line file. Let's try to see how we can do that. So actually we can see the history of the file as well. So normally we were running git log, right? If I pass the name of the file here, new one.txt, now I will see it's again very similar, all the logs, all the commits, but this time which are relevant to this file. Because normally I had 3, but this time I don't see this commit, right? The second in total, because in this commit I have nothing to do with the new one.txt file, but the others are somehow changing the new file, a new one file. So I see these two if I run the log command with the file name parameter. So let's add here as well. We can add these tips here. Let's add it here. let's move it here. Commit. Commit history. This was the staging. This was the branch, right? And this was the initialization of the project. Cool. Okay, we already did a lot of things, but what were we supposed to do? We were supposed to revert back the last change, right? So when I see the history of this, so this was unintentional, this was accidental. So I want this file to go back to this commit. How will I do that? We just discussed about these hashes, right? These unique IDs. So let me note this. So what I will do is git checkout. Checkout was normally going to a relevant branch or something else, right? So this time not a branch, but we are going to a relevant version of a specific file. So check out this version of new one.txt file. Okay, it's updated. Now I can see this change is deleted. So if I apply this change, okay, what happened now? There is no change, everything is committed, and if I see the logs, I will see I did a commit, I added a second one, I added a third one, and here I revert the update that I have done on my file, the first file, back, right? So this is the revert back operation. But normally I had two files, two additions and one update. I just revert back the update, right? So let's try to see if those additions are still there. It was new 4 txt. It's still there. This is my file, right? Very cool. And what I'm supposed to see on new 1, I expect to see only a single line. Yes, this one. Cool. So revert a file back on a specific version or commit is git checkout hash and the file name like new one.txt. All right. What else we can see? For example, let's suppose I want to revert the whole commit back. So let's see how we can do that, but maybe I can stop here and start a new recording over there.